Well, let's call to order the Mason City Council meeting for February 15th, 2021. Could we have the roll call, please? And please remember to announce from city and state where you are.
Mayor Whipple.
Present from Mason, Michigan.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Present from Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Clark.
Present, Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Josha.
From Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Ferris.
Here, Michigan.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I'm here from Mason.
Councilmember Vogel.
Present from Mason, Michigan.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation led by Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For tonight's invocation, and in honor of Black History Month, I would like to share a prayer written by Mary McLeod Bethune entitled Symphony of Life. Let us pray. Lord, we call you Father because we love you. We are glad to be called your children and to dedicate our lives to the service that extends through willing hearts and hands to the betterment of all mankind. We send a cry of thanksgiving for people of all races, creeds, classes, and colors the world over, and pray that through the instrumentality of our lives, the spirit of peace, joy, fellowship, and brotherhood shall circle the world. We know that this world is filled with discordant notes, but help us, Father, to so unite our efforts that we may all join in one harmonious symphony for peace and brotherhood, justice, and equality of opportunity for all. The tasks performed today, with forgiveness for all our errors, we dedicate, dear Lord, to you. Grant us strength and courage and faith and humility sufficient for the tasks assigned to us. Amen.
Hey, so Mr. Mayor, what we're going to have to do is, if you don't mind, going back to public comment, and we will allow for people to unmute themselves. We only have the ability to completely unmute the public and to completely unmute the public. And so we had muted them when we were having issues. And so during public comment, they may not have been able to speak if someone was interested.
All right, then we'll go to public comment and we'll unmute people that are in the public. And I would ask you to, if you want to address the council, please speak up and give me your name. And if there's more than one, then we'll go through them in turn.
I don't think we have anyone else, and we can now mute the people that are not co-hosts.
All right, then. Hearing no public comment, we will move on to the consent calendar. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Vogel, seconded by DeRosa to approve the consent calendar. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Josha.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. The consent calendar is approved 7-0. We have no unfinished business on the agenda, and on new business, we have one item. It was a proposal for consideration of a motion to return to in-person city council meetings as soon as such assemblies are legally allowed by the state. This was something that I asked the city manager to put on the agenda. She has included in the packet a good description of what the current rules are, which since our last meeting, a new order has come out that extends the restriction on assemblies to no more than 10 people inside from no more than 2 family groups through the end of March. So that would mean that, at least as it stands right now, that assemblies such as our city council meetings would not be allowed until the end of March. However, it was my thinking that we ought to put this motion forward and approve it. And then if the state law were to change, or if the orders were to change that would allow us to go to in-person, that we could do it as quickly as possible and not have to wait for another meeting to make the motion. So that's why this motion is here. As you all know, I'm not allowed to make motions, so I would ask if a council member is so inclined that someone would make the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Vogel?
I was gonna make a motion to return to in-person city council meetings as soon as such assemblies are legally allowed by the state.
Is there a
Second.
It's been moved by Vogel, seconded by Clark, to return to in-person city council meetings as soon as such assemblies are legally allowed by the state. Is there any discussion on the motion? This would be a good time. If you have questions about the city manager's SAR on this, this would be a good time to talk about it. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 2 questions for clarification purposes. Under the motion as proposed tonight, could there be a situation where the Open Meetings Act still allows us to utilize virtual meetings, but that we would still return if the epidemic orders are lifted? Is that what this is getting after?
That it would allow that. We would default to what our rules say, and that is the chair and the staff person would decide if the meeting is to be in person or not, if it's allowed to be remote, if the question's even, askable. But yes, you're exactly right. It's just to kind of give us that chance to maybe get back to in-person, a meeting sooner than we would if we leave it things as they are right now. Because as the council knows right now, the standing order is we meet remotely until we either decide otherwise or it becomes no longer legal. Well, it's legal through this year, and it's legal, it's mandated through the end of March. So
then my only other question would just be, I know we've talked about staff readiness, technological capabilities and so forth to shift back to in-person meetings. And I'm guessing, I guess my question is, are we able to flip the switch that quickly once an epidemic order is lifted, or should we allow ourselves some buffer time to transition back to in-person?
I'll let the city manager correct me if I'm wrong, but her and I have spoken about this several times, and she says that, given appropriate notice, which really means we have to have notice before we send out packets and the agenda, that she felt comfortable that we could meet in person. But Deb, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I would agree with that. I think we can pull a meeting together fairly quickly. We have a plan of how we would do that. I just want to be clear that it's likely that any meeting we have would not be like our normal in-person meetings, and there would be a lot of requirements and restrictions, and also, how the public sees the meeting may be considerably different. So there's just a lot of dynamics, but I think you'll be able to see that once we start meeting. I know in talking with other jurisdictions, they basically felt that when they met in person, they were meeting like a Zoom meeting, but in the same room, because in order to visually show the public the discussion and things like that. But that's something that can be addressed once we meet. I just wanted to set expectations that when we get back to in-person, it will not be the in-person that you remember. at least not initially.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can ask one more question, then I'll yield to other council members. Is the intention then that we would just save one meeting from having to, let me just lay out the example here. Next week, epidemic order is lifted, but the OMA is still allowing virtual meetings through the end of March. Is the purpose of this motion just to not have us to take that extra step at our first meeting in March to say, okay, we're ready to go back? I mean, are we just eliminating one extra step in the future? I'm trying to figure out if there is an urgency to this motion.
I don't know if there's any urgency because it's going to be what it's going to be. I mean, we're going to eventually not be allowed to meet remotely and we'll have to meet in person. It was just meant to kind of, because I can tell you that I've grown incredibly frustrated, and this meeting now takes me to the height of it. With these Zoom meetings, I think that the current rules in the state, quite frankly, are way overboard right now. And I think that things might change more quickly than we think. But that's just my opinion. So I just wanted to be prepared. So if the rules did change to allow in-person meetings, that we could make that happen as quickly as possible. And I understand what the city manager is saying, but it would be my intention that an in-person meeting is a fully in-person meeting. In other words, the public's allowed in and we're allowed in. There's going to be spacing and all that sort of thing. But that's my thinking. But again, as the city manager has told us many, many times, this is an incredibly fleeting, moving target. So we don't really know what is going to happen or when. So, you know, to me, I just wanted to throw this out there because I know I've talked to other council members who are concerned about the meetings. We've gone a long time now remotely. And just wanted to kind of flip the narrative a little bit so that it became a more automatic thing that we would go to in person. But if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. I know how we would handle the way we are situated right now.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
is it my understanding that if we approve this, for me, it saves time. So if this gets lifted, you know, on a Wednesday, Deb can react with staff quickly instead of waiting for our next Monday meeting where we've lost a few days to organize and plan. So like there's no harm in passing this tonight.
There's none in my mind, but Deb, do you see any downside to going this route from your perspective as the staff person?
No, I mean, I think it just potentially eliminates a step. I do want to express, which I think I did in this, it's going to be critical that we have enough time to transition. And by enough time, I mean that we have protocols for someone to participate remotely. So we'd have to have enough time to let you know we're planning to meet in person. You have to submit if you want to meet remotely, and we'd have to publish in that way. So I think all of that can occur fairly quickly. But I would think that Tuesday or Wednesday, the week before a meeting, it would have to be done by that time.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? And Deb, just to clarify, a person is allowed to meet, excuse me, let me rephrase that. We are allowed to hold a meeting that allows remote participation for any reason right now under the Open Meetings Act through March. Is that correct? After March, the only way a person could participate remotely is either through a military assignment or through a medical condition.
No, there's one other option. There can be an emergency order. So right now, the Ingham County has an emergency order. So if they continued their emergency order, we could qualify under that as well.
Was it emergency order or a state of emergency? Which I guess that's one of the questions.
It's a defined, the county's order qualifies for it. I don't know exactly what the language is, but the county's order qualifies for it.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Any other discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be the guy that throws in the other quagmire here. Does the current state statute allow cities to declare local orders as well, or is it just states and counties?
I'm going off the recollection of the Open Meetings Act. I know in the emergency order, we have to go through the county. You know, if you're actually seeking emergency funds, you have to go through the county and you have to operate under the Office of Emergency Management at the county. However, there was an addition to the Open Meetings Act that allowed for a declaration as a local unit still, but there's been a lot of legal debate of whether that actually holds any weight because the emergency law requires you to declare under the county. So even though it may open a door, there are many cities that feel that it's not actually possible for them to do that. So our current, because of our population, we have to file under the county, and that's what I would lean on.
And that's, I'm glad you said that, Deb. The key is the population. If we were over
Yes.
10,000, it changes everything.
Yes.
Being under 10,000, we are basically a subdivision of the county when it comes to an emergency. Whereas East Lansing, they can have their own emergency apparatus, if you will, which East Lansing has been doing. But right now, Mason has to function under whatever the county says from an emergency standpoint. Our emergency manager reports to basically the county emergency manager in an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes, sir.
a odd question. What happens if we just open up anyway and defy the county's order to keep us closed? What can they do for us? Do
Mayhem.
to us?
Well, I think we'd have multiple issues there, not the least of which would probably be our city manager not refusing to do it. Not to put words in your mouth, Deb, but I would suspect that might be a possible response. Jerry, I gotta be honest with you, I just don't think, what could they do? Probably very little of meaning, but it would sure be an ugly situation. It sure would look messy. And I don't know what the benefit would be of doing that. Because I believe me, I'm just as frustrated as you about doing this. I keep hoping against hope that someone will step up and throw some common sense at this process in the state and allow cities to make their own decisions. I mean, the answer to your question is I don't think anybody knows. I don't really think anybody knows because nobody's really done it yet.
Mr. Mayor,
Good.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Grosha.
other cities that have not followed orders from the state have been fined up to $7,000.
I didn't say defy the state. I just asked an information type question. What happens if we defy the county's order?
We
Not the state.
we would be fined.
By who?
That's a quarter of a dog.
By who though?
The county health department has full authority to fine businesses and other entities that don't follow their rules.
They operate they operate as agents of the state health department. So they have the same power as the state health department does.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I wonder, Deb, can we get creative in the spring? Let's say, can we hold a meeting and use the technology in the fire truck bay? And so then it's open when the weather is warmer and we can accommodate public if people do show up, since they do have like sound system and whatever we may need. I'm just wondering, is there space to be creative instead of having to hold it in the Sycamore room at City Hall? Or a pretty park, pavilion,
Well,
whatever. But I mean, when the weather gets warm,
I think those might be good ideas, but that's really not the topic. Right now, the topic is, do we want to vote to basically put ourselves on the waiting list to go to open or to in-person meetings, or do we want to stay in the reactionary mode where we would decide after the fact? So if we decide to go to an in-person meeting, yeah, there might be other options for how it can be held, but we're not even there yet.
well, I mean, the motion would meet that, because if she's primarily thinking the state lifts it and she needs to work on focusing, opening the meeting only in City Hall without thinking outside of the box per se. I mean,
I guess
so it
I-
kind of does, but we're good.
I'll speak for it because I know enough about it. It would be even more work because right now City Hall does have some of the technology in it to do our meetings the way we have. But we can cross that bridge when it's more appropriate to do it. Is there any
Thank
other?
you.
Yep. Is there any discussion on the motion? Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Absolutely.
Councilmember Josha,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
No.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. The motion is approved 6-1. All right, are there any council member reports?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Historic District Commission met this evening. Meeting started at 6 p.m., adjourned at 6:30. We discussed a new intern that we did get. So she's from MSU. She's an art major, and I spoke before that she's cataloged art inventory successfully. So she will be setting up our system for cultural inventory, which is excellent for our certified local government standing. An inventory report for the CLG is in March, so this will show huge progress from Mason's Historic District for meeting criteria. We also approved certificate of appropriateness for a projection sign, and that's for 128 West Ash for luxury apartments. That is above Salon 130. So it meets design and placement standards as required in the C1 zoning district. And we will meet the second Monday in March, pending new business. We also welcomed a new part-time assistant, Stephanie Strickland. She is replacing Marsha Holmes, who is an internal hire to full-time, and she will be working closely with Director Hude, especially helping with our busy office and permits. So we welcome Stephanie Strickland, and we are so thankful for Marsha's help. Because as we all know, the planning and zoning is very busy. And so this is exciting. And that concludes council member reports.
Mr. Mayor,
Any other ones? Was that Councilmember Ferris?
the Tree Commission Cemetery Board Combined Group met. We also have an opening, so I wanted to put in my plug for someone who wants to do that. We are trying to do the Arbor Day celebration one way or another, and we're trying to get creative about it this year, but we do need we are advertising for a honoree this year for the Arbor Day tree. So just in writing, email or otherwise, to city clerk would be great. Thank you.
Any other council member reports? City manager's report. Did you have anything you wish to add to what was in the packet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I wanted to add, one clarification from Councilmember Vogel. She did not move into a full-time position. Marsha is in a part-time position. So we have 3 part-time individuals in community development now, which we believe is a cost-effective way to address some of the challenges we have with workload in that department. So I just want to make that clarification. But 2, I wanted to note Councilmember Schaefer had brought up at the CIP a question regarding notices on the streets. We did notify all of those on the tax roll for the streets impacted. So that notice did go out, and we will make that part of our normal process to do door hangs and the direct mailing notice. And I think that's all I have.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Vogel.
I just wanted to say, Deb, thank you for the supplementary information, the Q&A. I kind of chuckled. It should just be called Rita's monthly questions. And so thank you. And shout out to DPW for the amazing snow removal and getting more snow tonight. I think we're all kind of crossing our fingers because of the winter thaw that we are expecting this spring and overflow at the wastewater treatment plant. So snow is pretty, but it makes me a little nervous, but really great job with the DPW, Mike. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just a thanks to the city manager for that report about the notification for street work. That's a good idea, and it's going to help. Thank you.
Any other council member reports? All right, we will be adjourned. We'll